My name is Daniel. I'm a fourth-year med student at Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. And we'll just kind of go over like the general rundown of today's panel. So we are today in the presence of many gracious program directors sacrificing their Friday evenings. So what will happen is we'll give each of the panelists around 8 minutes to talk about, whatever they want, whether it be about their program or what they're looking for in applicants. After each of the panelists, we'll have a Q&A at the very end. However, throughout the session, if you have any specific questions for any of the program directors, you're more than welcome to ask them in the chat box. Just remember to put their name in the front of the question and then just the question at the end. And then the program directors, you're more than welcome to answer those as we go throughout the panel itself. And then at the end, we'll just kind of, answer the questions that we see in the chat box throughout the entire panel. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself if you're brave enough to ask the panelists themselves, but honestly, there's no pressure to do any of that. And just kind of as an FYI, this session is being recorded so that we can post it onto YouTube later for anyone who may have missed it. And so with that, we'll hand it off to the first panelist.
Okay, so I'll just introduce everyone also. So we have Dr. Al-Ramadhani from University of Pittsburgh. We have Dr. Otallah from Wake Forest University. We have Dr. Mangum from Phoenix Children's Hospital. And we have Dr. Gilmore from Case Western University, Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. We'll be starting with Dr. Al-Ramadhani since she has her own slides, so she'll share her screen as well.
I can't share if you don't stop sharing. Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. Can you see share? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruba Al-Ramadhani. I am a pediatric neurologist and epileptologist, practice in UPMC Children, and I recently became the program director for child neurology residency program. So I just want to briefly talk about our program, which I am very passionate about. But so this is a group of our residents with a recent graduate and a picture of them having so much fun, obviously. So just a brief introduction. We're just gonna introduce myself, but also talk a little bit about our hospital, our program, and our city. So our hospital has been built and started running since 1890, and it was in Oakland neighborhood. Currently now our hospital is in the Lawrenceville, our dedicated children's hospital in the Lawrenceville area in Pittsburgh. The doors have been open since 1890 for all children of all background, race, and with whether they're able to pay for it or not. And we are proud of that mission for our hospital. Our program is a 5-year program, as all other programs. We do 2 years of pediatrics, 1 year of adult neurology, and then 2 years of child neurology. So our adult neurology is a dedicated year during PGY3, then we do 2 years of child neurology. I quickly wanted to touch base because we got this questions a lot during our open houses about the continuity clinic. Continuity clinic is 2 years. During the 2 years of pediatric are under pediatric, so pediatric only. During 3rd, 4th, and 5th year, we do continuity clinic in our children's hospital, which gives our PGY3 a break when they come in on there during adult year. They come into our during PGY3 except for stroke, night float, and ward and consult during child neurology year. And then our program is basically a combined program with the NDD program. So I just wanted to mention that we also have an NDD program that is a dedicated full spot. They do come and share with us during child neurology year, and then they have a dedicated year for NDD. Our educational program is we have multiple educational program that is mainly resident driven, fellow driven didactic curriculum, either fellow lecture, journal clubs, and data presentation for resident. Our recently started a social journal club where we do journal club in a outside the hospital setting, just to hang out and build relationship between faculty and resident. We also do have our core conferences with the program leadership. And those are mainly dedicated for child neurology, but we also have core conferences during adult year and core conferences during pediatric years. Our resident during PGY 4 and 5 consider part of the fellow program in UPMC, within the UPMC system, so they have access to the fellow courses that are basically open for all fellowship programs within the UPMC Children's. They are not mandatory, but all our fellows are welcome to attend. And these have a multiple subjects that they discuss between career development, research, statistic, and all that. We pride ourselves with a significant mentoring, leadership, and I can't even see my slides. Hold on. Yeah, and multiple research and biostatistic that our program basically offers, and job advice. Mentoring start from why can't I move forward? Okay. Mentoring start during PGY 1. Each resident is dedicated a mentor that mainly for a kind of a work and life mentor and career mentor, but we also have research mentor, and I'll touch base with that in a second. And then we strive ourselves with making sure our residents have a good work-life balance, because we know how residency can be very hard and tiring. And long hours. So we strive ourselves with making sure our fellows have that. We are a very family-oriented program. So our resident and like most of our resident and fellows call us, all the attendings, by their first name, and that is mainly came from our division chief, who would refuse for us to call him by his last name. So that makes hopefully makes our fellow and resident feels within like a family within the program. We have a multiple conferences. As you can see, this is a very busy slide, but the core didactics are the one that with asterisks in it. So we have the child neurology core didactics, typically on Wednesday AM and PM session, and it was made that way for a specific reason for our PGY3 during their continuity clinic to be able to attend while they're at the Children's Hospital. We also have our case conference on Tuesday, which is a case-based learning. Is a very unique actually conference where the hospital and not the hospital, sorry, the patient will come to the conference, present the history themselves, and then we do a live exam for all attendees, and then afterwards the patient get excused, and then we discuss the case in length with all the subspecialists available. And then the other core didactics is T round on Fridays, which basically a neuroradiology rounds where we discuss interesting cases within a dedicated neuroradiologist for that conference, where it's resident led. They go over the images and they give their differential, and then the neuroradiologist is the one that basically tells us about the case and teaches a little bit more about it. We have the research opportunities. We have a research committee consists of all these three people, Dr. Kirkpatrick, Dr. Sigawa, and Dr. Cummings. They are basically start their mentoring start PGY 1. During PGY 3, during the adult year, all our resident and fellows have a 2-month call free dedicated for research. They learn about research and what they would like their scholarly activity to be. And then during PGY 4 and 5, if they're interested in research, furthering down their research, research months are available during electives. And then the program is encouraged all our resident and fellow to present in a national meeting or present a manuscript that considered their graduation scholarly activity. And they present this during their graduation, their scholarly activity basically they worked on. We obviously are affiliated to a University of Pittsburgh. And that opens up a multiple resources from research perspective and School of Medicine, of course. Money is available for grants if of the resident interested. And then the new thing that I wanted to highlight is the Neurology, Neurosurgery, and Neuropathology Pittsburgh Research Educational Program that literally just started this year. And it's basically to all interested resident, and if they are interested in kind of getting a K grant in the future, they can apply for that grant during their PGY 4. And then it's built in within their year or training, so that they are able to get the research grant and not have to postpone or increase their years of graduation.
Closing remarks, please.
I'm sorry?
Closing remarks, you're at your time, yeah.
Yes, diversity inclusion, I'm just gonna put that in the slide. And then UPMC Children is very dedicated in having a very inclusion committee. Our program have of all races, genders, and sexual orientation, and I myself as a representative of that. And then just last or closing remarks, wellness. Our resident have personal cubicle, shared administrative support. They have their own nurse and AA, which is administrative assistant. We have a snack bar available, book money, and then we also pay extra for any sponsored conference attendance. And then all the other things that I mentioned in the slide. And then we have multiple wellness-based committee, and then activities, and then the resident support, the division support the resident meeting up every other month for wellness and like having fun. And then our resident facilitate their own schedule, and it's basically resident driven. We do not, as long as they're compliant with the ACGME requirement, we let them do their own schedule. Pittsburgh is a very diverse city, very big. There's a lot to do, and multiple neighborhood, very food scene is great. I gotta say, we were impressed when we moved here a few years ago. And then multiple sporting events for people who are interested in that. And then a lot to do, a lot of, you can see sports activities. I'm not a sports person, so I'm not just gonna touch base on that, and this is our division chief, by the way. This is him kayaking, so that is very impressive. And this is our contact information, so please let us know, touch base with us if anything you need, or have any further questions. Any of us are more than happy to answer these questions. And thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Like we said before, for those who just joined us, if you have specific questions for any of the panelists, feel free at any point to write it in the chat. Just specify the name of the program director, and they'll get to your question. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and we'll start with Dr. Otallah.
Thank you, Fadi. So we're going to do the old-fashioned slide, advanced slide here, I guess. So I'm Scott Otallah. I'm a pediatric neurology, child neurology program director at Wake Forest University School of Medicine. That's Brenner Children's Hospital. We're now part of Atrium Health, and actually we're one of the 5 biggest health systems in the country throughout all of our locations at this point. Wake Forest is actually the academic hub of that large health system, but you'll see a lot of names associated with us because of the different mergers that have happened over the last few years. This is a group of us up on the garden roof of Brenner Children's Hospital recently, and you can see the lovely skyline of Winston-Salem there in the background. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go ahead. Go ahead and advance the slide. So I'm not going to get into as many details today just because we have such a short time, but I wanted to point out some of the highlights of why might you want to come to Wake. Here we are having fun at one of our conferences in the upper right-hand corner there. So we are really about one-on-one relationships with our fellows and with our junior residents as well. It's lovely that we have all of our offices in a very small space, and our residents are just down the way on the other side of our clinic. So we're in and out of their room, and they're in and out of our offices all day, every day. And that really adds to the family environment that we love that we have at our location. We also, similar to what Ruba said, we assign a mentor from your very first year. And that person does tend to transition in your resident and fellow years, but you're seeing child neurologists from very early on in your training all the way through. And I check in with folks regularly. Some of those folks are editors and national chairs and doing all sorts of committee work. We're really proud that our residents leave training, as they do for many programs. I think one theme you're going to hear today is there's lots of great places to get training. And so just walk away with that, none of these are going to be bad places. It's all about finding the right fit for you and for us. But we're very proud that our residents read into EDG independently, and they're ready to go into practice if they do want to go into general child neurology practice after their training. But we have a great slate of pediatric subspecialties that they get exposed to. I should have introduced myself as this. I'm all about education, so I'm also the clerkship director for our Department of Neurology. I'm a pediatric neuroimmunologist, and I also do pediatric concussion, including concussion research on the side. We have very highly specialized epilepsy care, as many of these centers are going to, but we were one of the first places to do laser ablations and have one of the few MEGs in the country that we use for our epilepsy surgeries. You'll get excellent pediatric training, as you will at all of these places. We are integrated with our adult neurology colleagues, and we have a shared didactic program. So you have an even bigger class. We have 2 a year, as you're going to see, but you have an even bigger group of residents that you get to know and become friends and colleagues with beyond even your child neurology fellow colleagues. And thankfully, we're one of the few programs in the country, there are more and more at this point, but we're one of the few programs in the country with no in-house adult neurology call. And so that's always a relief coming out of the second pediatrics year to go into the adult year, knowing you're never going to be by yourself in the adult hospital having to do everything. And then Winston-Salem is a sort of known and underappreciated, livable, affordable cities. Our residents can walk to work. Our residents can purchase homes. It's a really wonderful place to be, either as a single person or for people who are raising families. Many of our residents do either come with children or have children with them in Winston-Salem. Advanced slide. Sorry, I was sitting here trying to advance it. So please remind me if I do that again. So we have lots of volume, greater than 5,000 outpatient visits annually, a busy consult service. We have a night float system, and our fellows primarily do home call during years 4 and year 5. So you're not bouncing into the hospital nearly as much, not getting nearly as much interrupted sleep. And then a busy pediatric EMU and epilepsy service. We have 9 dedicated child neurology faculty with 2 APPs, 2 adult neurology faculty, and 2 peds neuropsych. So lots of people to learn from, and we're an expanding program, so we'll have more pediatric neurologists by the time you would come through. We also have a full support network with a social worker, infusion nurse, epilepsy nurse navigator, ketogenic dietitian, et cetera. And as I said, we have 2 fellows per year. Go ahead and advance, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Winston-Salem. Most people don't know too much about it. I already mentioned the livability. It also has minimal traffic. I'm a small city person. I wouldn't be able to drive through some of the places that my program director colleagues here have to drive through on a regular basis. Lots of local events, lots of local festivals. I'm very excited. We have the biggest book festival in the surrounding 3 states that's happening in Winston-Salem this coming week. And so I get to see a lot of national authors come into Winston. We have lots of professional and college sports teams here to watch. We're close to the mountains and close to the beach. We have things that people don't know about, like the UNC School of the Arts, which gives us great music and symphony and opera. We do a lot of fun conferences and do a lot of fun sports as a group, along with departmental activities. Go ahead and advance. So we bring people in from all over the region, all over mostly the eastern and midwestern part of the United States. These are our current residents here. Advance the slide. And our graduates go on to do about 50-50 in terms of fellowship or going straight into general child neurology jobs. You can see our two current fellows who are getting ready to graduate. Our superstar is going to headache fellowship and pediatric critical care fellowship, sort of at the programs of their choice. We've been a 2-program a year for 7 years now, so we've had 2 groups graduate, and they've spread themselves all the way across the country. We're very happy that we're able to support people in very unique and diverse paths. So we have a graduate who's joining us again as faculty this month as a pediatric neuro-ophthalmologist, and we're very excited to have him. Go ahead and advance. Lots of clinical research happening at Wake Forest. And so all of our residents pretty much go to more than one national conference. Most of them go to a regional and a national conference at least each year. And we have quite a few conferences that are hosted in Winston-Salem. So one that you'll see a lot of residents post about is the PINRI conference, that they come to learn about epilepsy in Winston-Salem. We also have a lot of the people who invented neuroultrasound are in Winston-Salem at Wake Forest. And so we also have a lot of both adult and pediatric residents and fellows come to Winston-Salem to learn about neuroultrasound. Go ahead and advance the slide. Whoops. Not quite ready to go on. So here's a couple of the pictures that some of the children of our faculty draw for our doors so that you can come and locate us easily. And here's some of our graduating residents. You can see them with their kids. This is just a small smattering of their kids who joined us at graduation last year. So I was trying to keep it brief. I'm sure that leaves you lots of gaps in all the things that I would tell you about on the graduation day, but I just want to give you a little flavor of our program, and I appreciate you guys coming out on a Friday night.
Thank you so much, Dr. Otallah. So we'll start next with Dr. Mangum.
Hi, Dr. Otallah. If your Dr. Wright would like an MCC fellowship, we do have open positions, so feel free to have him come and interview with us.
Dr. Wright has interviewed with your program.
Oh.
And he was positively impressed, but I think he'll go wherever his first choice is what the fellowship directors have been telling him. He's a superstar. And I will say to Ruba that you need to say hi to Stephanie, one of your PGY2s, because she emailed me.
Oh, I love Stephanie. Okay.
Sorry.
She's on the PICU with me right now. Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Tara Mangum. I am the program director here at Phoenix Children's. The picture that you're seeing, and again, I'm trying to click, this was us. It was attendings versus residents escape room. The attendings won, which is a tradition that we have. There's also 2 of the most competitive people I know in our faculty group, and I'm fairly certain they never would return to work if we'd have lost. So that'll explain the competition between us. Next slide. Background on our hospital, it's behind me. That's a lie, but this is our tower. It was actually built in 2011, I believe, and we moved into it. Before that, this was more or less a community hospital, and it was a tiny little building off to the right side of this. We have expanded substantially. There are 11 floors. We've opened the 11th floor, which is a 48-bed NICU, and it is full. I don't know what we're going to do with the new patients that we have. It is the only licensed freestanding children's hospital in Arizona, and we get patients from everywhere. We see them from Mexico, a lot from Mexico, New Mexico, Colorado, California, Nevada. We tend to steal patients from those borders. And then we're a level 1 pediatric trauma center, the only one in the state. And we've been named to the U.S. News and World Report for Children's Best Hospitals many years running. Next slide. So just some program highlights about us. Most people have already gone through this. So comprehensive curriculum, we have 24 months of Gen Peds, 12 months of adult, and 24 months of Peds Neuro. We split our adult year up. We do all of your inpatient during your PGY3 year, but your outpatient experiences are done at the Children's Hospital. Our residents suggested that if they wanted exposure to different fellowships, they needed to be seeing clinic patients so they can make an appropriate decision. So we split it up at that point. There is no in-house adult call. You only do your night float for the Children's Hospital. So you are bouncing back and forth between the 2 of them. When it comes to faculty, there's a lot of us, we're rapidly growing. We have multiple specialties, and you can see a couple of them there, which is something that I am very grateful for. I am one of the neurocritical care doctors, and we've had several children come in that I just don't know, and I end up calling one of my colleagues. So we've had, actually on the unit right now, there's a status dystonicus, and I don't know what else to do. I have him on all of the meds. So I called Michael Crewer, who's one of our movement specialists, and he actually came to the bedside to see the kid. So we have a wonderful faculty here. It's a very collaborative environment. We have 4 residents per year. And what our typical inpatient world is like is we have a floor team, we have an ICU team, and then there's a PIMU as well. And the PIMU is 8 beds, I believe. The ICUs, we have a CDICU, a PICU, and a NICU, all of which can flex up to 48 beds, which is a lot of fun. And our wards team covers literally every other patient in the hospital. And obviously it's a group of adult neurology residents, peds residents, psychiatry, and us covering the inpatient service. So pretty typical, I think, is what you see with most places. I tell people, and I'm sure you're learning this here, you can't go to a program and become a bad doctor. You're going to learn things. So how you learn in the environment in which you learn is the biggest point. Because I don't think anybody represented here is going to teach you incorrect things. Go ahead and advance the slide. So this is a little bit about us. We have a child neurology residency, obviously. We have a pediatric residency. I think they're like 36 or 40 residents a year now. We have a combined med peds and a pharmacy residency. And all of the fellowships are on the right-hand side, and those in red are actually just through neurology. Those are ours. And our pediatric neuromuscular program will be starting in July. So lots of opportunities. For me, it's great to have the different fellowships because you can work more closely with those fellows. And I know when it comes to research, a lot of our residents will reach out to, say, the ICU fellows and collaborate on case studies of patients that they've seen together. And so it's more of a group effort versus just having each resident individually go about doing something on their own. Okay, next slide. So for me, I switched around a little bit. What did I want when I was looking at a residency? My advice to you are these things. So culture is huge. You need to feel comfortable with the people that you're learning from. If you're not comfortable in the environment, then you're not going to learn. So it's unfortunate now that all interviews are virtual. It's difficult to get an idea of what people are like. I remember coming here for my interview, and it was frustrating, not frustrating. It was funny because all of the attendings usually don't see each other that often, and they gathered together for lunch and were talking to each other like good friends. And it was wonderful to see, but at the same time, I was like, I would like to be a part of this. And luckily I was able to. Patient volume is another big one that I would recommend if you learn best in small amounts of patients where you can breathe for a long period of time. We are not the program for you. We have huge volume of patients that come in and a variety of diagnoses. When I first moved out here, I didn't know that Navajo neurohepatopathy was a thing. So that was fun for me because I just sort of was given that in sign out. This is a 7-year-old with Navajo neurohepatopathy. So variety of diagnoses, we have them here, but that's something that you do want to see. That way you have a flavor of everything going on. Whenever somebody randomly asks you during the day, hey, have you ever seen an erythromelalgia? You'd be like, yeah, I had a 13-year-old girl in my clinic 2 years ago. So that's very important. You need to kind of have an idea of what sort of volume and patient types that you'll be seeing, and then formal and informal educational opportunities. So we also have pretty rigorous didactics. We have an epilepsy case conference that is every week. We have the case conferences that our residents put together. We have a tumor board every week. There is our scheduled Thursday didactics, which are protected, that vary among which attendings are presenting, going over things. We have a neuroradiology conference. We have, when there are autopsies to go through, we have a neuropathology conference. They usually schedule them at like 10 o'clock in the morning for reasons I don't know. So it's difficult for our residents to go down and actually participate in the dissections. But everywhere you go is going to have conferences. How you want to learn, you need to figure it out. I'm sure you figured out how to learn after all of these years of doing nothing but learning. And then here we have, I think we're affiliated with 5 different medical schools. So when it comes to teaching opportunities, they are abundant. Not only do you have medical students rounding with you, so you can do sort of chalk talks and bedside teaching, but there's also the ability to give lectures to your fellow residents. You can always teach the fellows in various specialties. If you're a cardiology fellow, you can be like, hey, the brain exists. Maybe you should think about it. And then I know some of our residents actually go to the medical schools and give lectures like MS2s to kind of make them say, hey, child neurology exists, because I'm sure every program director on here has read more than one personal statement saying that they didn't know child neurology was a thing until very late in the game. And the other thing you need to look for in a residency is resources. So what do we provide you? Yes, you're selling yourself to us. I get that. But at the same time, we need to be able to check the boxes on what you would be beneficial for you in a residency. So do you have access to a gym? We have one on our campus that you can go to. You have to badge into it, but it's open 24 hours. Do you have access to mental health? We have 2 people on site that are mental health. We also have EAP services available. We also have sort of opt-out wellness half days every quarter. Do you have access to attendings that are willing to be there and help? On call, you have 4 different attendings you can pick from. If you're really bored, you just call each of them in line, I guess.
All right, just closing remarks, please. Thank you.
Okay, that's about it. You just need to be aware of what you want and then find the program that meets all of those requirements. I think that's all I had. Next slide. Oh, these are our current residents. I am hanging out with one of the 3s so far. And Stephanie Ringo, you can see her pictures on there. She's one of our current PGY3s. Next slide. Yeah, that's it. This was at our graduation this past year. And just a smattering of our attendings and residents. So we have fun. And I have dogs.
Thank you so much. All right, and we'll go to Dr. Gilmore now.
Hello, I'm Ed Gilmore. I'm the program director at Ruba and Babies Children's Hospital. Next slide. We are associated with University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center, as well as Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. Every single one of those names is a mouthful. Around here, I say I'm from Rainbow. We've been around since 1887 as a children's hospital, so everyone around here knows what Rainbow means. And we are well ranked among children's hospitals nationally. I would describe us, I think we're missing part of the slide there, but that's okay. I would describe us as a medium-sized program. So sometimes we're really busy, sometimes we're not as busy, and we'll do more teaching, things like that. Again, as has been alluded to, you want to try to find the right sized, the right type of program for you in terms of size, things like that. Those things are important. Some places are super busy, some places are a little less busy. You don't want time to read. And then finally, we are affiliated with a adult hospital. We are separate but affiliated, which I've worked at both independent ones and integrated ones. I personally like being integrated into adult hospital, basically because not for the teaching and the learning, but clinically it's easier to get certain things done, like particularly like MRI scans. There's a lot more sick adults than there are sick children in most places, and so like for instance, MRI techs sometimes go home after 5 or not available at least on weekends. We can get those things done quite easily because they're around scanning adults. They can scan kids too. Next slide. So we're a 5-year accredited program. So we only do the catechol programs like most other people. Some places will take people after pediatrics. We don't typically do. We are going to be peds board eligible if you want. We currently only have 1 train a year. We're looking to expand. Some people worry about call. Our fellows take call about twice a week during the last 2 years of their child neurology training. We have a very strong neurology program, which we work closely with, as well as general pediatrics, and we're very flexible, so you can basically design your schedule to meet whatever your interests are. Next slide. One of the things that makes us different or relatively unique is we have 3 separate courses where basically you just do the coursework during that time. We have a neuroscience course, an EEG course, and an EMG neuroproduction study course. The neuroscience course is done at the medical school, and in the afternoons you do mystery cases with the medical students. You lead them and basically help them learn from their cases. The EEG course I know more about because kids get a lot more EEGs than they get EMG neuroproduction studies, for instance. And Basically, this is a didactic course. You basically do not have clinical work to do besides occasional evening call or and you do continuity clinic during the time. But other than that, you're actually in lectures, and our trainees really learn EEGs well because of that course, and they continue to read EEGs and then staff it with the epilepsy attending overnight during the day, if they're on call, things like that. And then there is an introduction to research course along with all the other didactic stuff. But our coursework is pretty unique. Next slide. We do 3 years of continuity clinic. We actually have 2. We have one that's in the hospital, and that one we do in the hospital for when they're on service. And then we have, when they're not on service, there's one out in the community. Basically, our hospital's based in the city, and we get predominantly, although not exclusively, inner city population, and the consults we get in suburban communities is sometimes different. So we decided to increase the diversity of things they were seeing. We would do 2 different sites. There's no restriction on the type of patients you'd see. Although if you want to take on a patient that's really complex, for instance, infantile spasms, of course you have to be available to take care of them. But we do have patients the patients like that, they're being managed by residents, of course, with supervision of attending. They can contact the attending at any time for help, but that is available to the patients if you want to take on challenging cases. Next slide. We have multiple clinics. Again, I'm not going to read them all here. I will point out, actually, that's cut off at the bottom, neurogenetics. One of our geneticists, Dr. DeBrose, she trained in child neurology and then decided to do another fellowship or another residency in genetics. So for obvious reasons, she has a great interest in neurogenetic disorders. So she's a great colleague and person to work with in terms of learning neurogenetics. Next slide. Our graduates have gone on to both academic and private practice, mostly academic positions, but some in private practice. Most of our trainees who have gone on to do a fellowship have done epilepsy, all within actually our institution. We did have a recent patient do headache as well. And knock on wood, all of our graduates have passed boards on the first try. Next slide. Faculty does industry-sponsored research in epilepsy, migraines and Tourette's, along with other types of research in terms of patient studies, as well as we do cutting-edge therapies such as gene therapies for spinal muscular atrophy, Duchenne's, and things like that. Next slide. And then our hospital strives for a diverse workforce at all levels, everyone from administrative staff to attendings. Our GME office has programs supporting underrepresented minorities in medicine because the challenges of them can be different than people with more traditional backgrounds. And finally, our GME office has support for the mental health of trainees. The training can be stressful, so we want to make sure that we provide support at all levels during your training. Next slide. And then finally, Cleveland itself. We say Cleveland Rocks is a song from the 90s, so it's very popular around here. We're a medium-sized city, ethnically diverse, and quite affordable. So basically, your salary as a resident makes you around what the median person in Cleveland makes. So you don't feel it's definitely a very livable city. Most of our residents live within short driving distance, for just convenience sake. Some live in walking distance. If you're into sports, I'm sure you know we have 3 professional sports teams: football, baseball, and basketball, although sometimes I question how professional the Browns are sometimes. We have a world-class symphony. People argue whether we have the best symphony in America. We have an excellent and free art museum that's just a delight to go to. Very diverse food scene. And believe it or not, we have the largest theater district outside of New York, so we have lots of traveling Broadway shows that come through town. And for those people who like doing outdoorsy stuff, we have a very large metro park system. We have a national park that's actually within a short distance of Cleveland, and we have the lake, of course, which we're right on Lake Erie. So if you're into water sports, we're also relatively short. For instance, you can drive to upstate New York for just like day trip skiing if you're interested in those kind of things. Next slide. And if you have any questions, you'll have my email.
Okay, perfect. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, so thank you for all of our wonderful panelists for giving their presentations. So we'll move on to the final section of the panel, which is the Q&A. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself if you want to and ask any of our wonderful panelists any questions you may have. You're also more than welcome to just type them in the chat box and then we can kind of go over them. But in the meantime, I can just ask everyone a common question that we often get just to kind of start the ball rolling. So for our panelists, what are your thoughts about signaling? How does your program interpret signaling? You know, how much value do you put into signaling your applicants?
You want to call us out so we don't talk over each other? I think that we're still new to signaling. Signaling in child neurology has only been present since last year. And something changes every year to make it a little bit harder to decide how to interpret. I tell our residents from Wake, we usually have a couple a year going into child neurology that they don't need to signal us. And then people who do away rotations, you should talk to the program director if you did away rotations. Generally, they don't need to signal. But I think that with only 3 signals, we all probably value signals significantly, especially if it's from an applicant who's a good fit for our program otherwise. And so that being said, because there are only 3 signals, I think we certainly interview lots of people who didn't signal us, and so I think it does certainly increase your chance of getting an interview at a program. There are a few programs probably who get more signals than they can interview, and so again, if you just do want to use them somewhat strategically. Is usually I'm also a clerkship director, so I have this conversation quite a bit. But I think that's plenty for a start. I can say a lot more about it. I can talk about this for a long time, but I want to give everybody else space and time, and I'll add in if I have other thoughts.
Well, for us in Phoenix, I don't really know how to use them yet. Last year, first year that we saw them, so I just sort of took notes as to who signaled, and then where they went, whether they came here. We had somebody who signaled and then didn't even accept the invitation offer. So I really clueless as to what to do with signals half the time. So it's more of something I've taken note of, sort of kept on the back burner. I do pay attention to them, but for me, it doesn't mean if you signal, you're at a higher likelihood of being hired. It's still going to be I will look through your application and we'll go from there. But I truly do not know what to do with them yet, besides like, hey, look, they signaled. That's the best I got.
And I would absolutely agree with that the data don't bear out that it makes you any more likely to match at that place if you signaled there. But I do think it increases your chance of getting an interview. Sorry.
No, helpful.
I want to add, like, again, it's news, something very new to us. Again, we looked at it on almost all the signals, but at the end of the day, and we had it part of like the discussion when we discussed who we could give interviews for, but we review every application we got for last year extensively. And yeah, one of the things we discussed and put a mental note in if they signal us or not. But at the end of the day, we like send an interview to the applicants who we thought they would be a good fit for our program. And the other thing is that because the signaling happened before interview, so it typically doesn't have a way in from like ranking perspective, at least from our program.
Yeah, I would agree with basically what everyone said. I think it's hard to interpret, but I would say being in some place like Cleveland is not always the most like people don't talk about wanting to, hey, I'm so excited to move to Cleveland in terms of compared to like Southern California or like Miami or someplace like that. If I'm looking at an applicant who is a superstar who's always lived in Southern California and I get an application from them, they're probably not coming here unless they have a good reason to. And so like unless I see something, they're probably, I'm probably one of their safety programs. One of the things I'm looking for is someone who, for good candidates, but someone probably who has, who I think is likely to want to come to our area, because geography does matter. this, one thing I always tell people is the city you live in, the city you live where you train doesn't matter. You want to be happy in the city you're in. And that's one of the negative things about doing the Zoom videos is you like, to be honest, like people like to show you the hospital. Honestly, I don't care what the hospital looks like. I care if the people are nice in the hospital. But what the facility, they're all reasonably nice facilities. The city, but you want to be comfortable in the city you live in. You want to be, you want to be happy there. Be able to just feel safe. All those things. That's much more important than what the actual hospital looks like. And if you've never been to that city before, sometimes it's hard to get a feel for that. If you might not know if you like, you might get to a city and say, oh, this is really good, or ooh, this is not what I was expecting.
Thank you for all your wonderful answers. Do any of you guys have any specific questions? Otherwise, I can just keep going with common questions. This is a great opportunity if you do have any burning questions to ask any of them.
Yeah, hi Daniel, I can ask one. My name is Nikki. I'm a 4th year at UAB. Thank you guys for being here and spending your Friday night sharing wisdom with us. I imagine several other applicants on the call are also putting finishing touches on applications. So just wanted to know from a program director perspective, if there's any do's or don'ts in personal statement or experiences that you've seen, just for us to be able to put our best foot forward.
I guess I'm starting. I think from personal statements, the most important thing to me that I read is, why are you interested in child neurology? So what brought you? And that doesn't mean that you have to say that you wanted to be a child neurologist since kindergarten, but at least a valid reason that shows that passion for child neurology. I think that's the most important thing that we look for. I look for, at least when looking into a personal statement. And in terms of do's and don'ts, like I said, we look at every application thoroughly, and geographical location also bear weight into the selection process. But that doesn't mean if we see somebody that we think is a good fit, we're not going to offer interview or rank highly. But that's all I got.
For me, it's
I agree.
Go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, so I agree. One of the things, like, I'll just give you a little insight into my like when I'm interviewing people. One of the things I would ask them is, why do you want to be a child neurologist, and what do you want to be doing in 10 or 15 years? I don't really care what I don't really care what the answers are, particularly for like, what do you want to do in 10 or 15 years? I want to know that you thought about it. Like, so I just want to know that you've put some thoughts into, where do I want to be doing? I don't, as long as you thought about it, I don't really, private practice, academic research, I don't really care. I just want to know you thought about it. If someone says, well, I don't really know, then I'm like, then I have to question like how much people have really put a thought into their, what career they want to do and things like that. I just want to know that people have actually, again, and people can change their answer too, obviously. I just want to know that they've been putting some thought into what do I want to be doing with my career kind of thing.
Actually, I was going to say something similar. When it comes to personal statements, I want to know why you want to do it and where you think you're going to end up. Obviously, that's going to change. Whenever I started, I thought I was going to be a headache doctor. I'm a neurocrit doc. Like, you can't get any further apart. But just the same thing, that you've actually and realized that there are other opportunities just in being a general child neurologist, which is, there's nothing wrong with it, but as long as you've thought that there are other opportunities out there, that really for me is what makes the most, that you don't just know it's child neurology, there's child neurology plus.
I would just say, I don't think there's really a way to go wrong with your activities list. I meant with your activities list specifically. It really depends. Where you put things doesn't make too much difference. We all dig very thoroughly through your application, so things are very unlikely to get lost, especially to the program directors. Personal statement wise, it's coming a little bit late on time now, but I think just making sure someone else has read it, other than yourself, because you can get so lost in the minutia that you miss the big picture. And that can happen to anybody for sure. And then I think the other thing would just be anybody who's getting some advising would know, but don't get too creative. It doesn't have to be too unique. It's not a work of art necessarily. I've seen some really great creative ones, but I've also the ones that have probably gone the most off track are the ones that tried to do something really unique and creative, and it didn't quite come together. And I don't think anybody ever read it and gave them advice. So those would be kind of my don'ts. I think I would echo things that everybody else has said with the do's, although I will say I think it's somewhat program dependent. You don't necessarily have to panic that you need to know what you want to do other than child neurology for all programs. It's great to have an idea if you've gotten interested in something, but it's a lot especially depending on the focus of your school. It's a lot to figure out just that you want to be a child neurologist. So I think that's a great start.
Can I just say one more thing is that if you're interested in the field of child neurology, you already have a job security, because there is always going to be a shortage of child neurologists, no matter what, if you want to subspecialize or not. And that's the beauty of our subspecialty. I'm an epileptologist, but that doesn't mean that if I want to find a job as a child neurologist, I literally can find a job anywhere. And that's, so you have, the world is your oyster. Basically, you can choose whether subspecialty, the type of practice you want to do in the future, academic or private practice. So you don't have to know that early on, but when you're trying to think of a program, that gets you the most exposure of all the options available, because that way you can make an informed decision after, whether during residency or after. Just a piece of advice.
Thank you for that. Thank you all. That was helpful.
Thank you for the question.
Anybody else have any burning questions to ask? Just looking at the time, I also want to make sure everyone gets out in time, but
Yeah, we got one in the chat. So Aaron Alkan, a pediatric physician from Istanbul, Turkey, would you still consider whether an IMG applicant like myself could adapt to living in your city? And then I currently live in Istanbul, and I believe I can live anywhere.
So I think I would just echo what other people have said, which is that we look at all the applications in detail, no matter where people are coming from or what their background. They all get an equal weight and an equal reading. We have had, out of our last few years, we have had some international medical graduates who've gone through our program and graduated and gone on to do great things. And so we'll be happy to look through, and I don't think that we're worried about you adapting to living in the city, particularly, at least in Winston-Salem. It's an easy place to live.
I echo the same. I look at everything identical. We've had wonderful physicians from everywhere, so it's not something that I worry about at all. And I mean, if you think you can live anywhere, we're really hot here, but other than that, I think we've got a lot going for us.
As an IMG myself, we moved to the US about 16, 17 years ago. So I know that it's not it's a struggle to get into residency. But I have to say, as a program director, I echo everything. We read every application thoroughly, and we have several IMGs currently in our program right now. So we welcome IMGs, and we look through the applications thoroughly during recruitment season.
Yep, same here. We have international grads, and we definitely look at them just as carefully as we look at the domestic grads.
Just a quick add-on to that. It's related. How much do you guys care about the geographic preference when it comes to the applications? Do you want to see the applicant have the geographic preference set to your area, or would you prefer to see them have no geographic preference, or how does it look when you know that they didn't select your preference?
To select our preference is pretty much to select one of. We're not specific at all. Whenever you select our preference, there's all the way up to Montana and then us. So to me, geographic preference just means you kind of want to be on the western side of the country. That's all I got. So I know a lot of the eastern, they're much smaller, but ours is so huge, it doesn't really make a difference.
I'll say that in child neurology, at least, because you guys get, if I'm remembering correctly, you guys get 3 geographic preferences. And then so if you don't choose one of those 3, my understanding is we just see it as you didn't choose a preference, so that we couldn't be biased against the people who didn't choose our geographic preference. So if we don't know if you chose no preference or if we just didn't choose us as a preference when you don't choose us. But again, because you do choose 3 geographic preferences, I think we do look at it similar to what Edward said before. You know, not everyone wants to live in the Southeast, and that's okay. But if you put in application into our program, and we know you have some interest, if you have your geographic preference, we know you have a little bit more interest. Does it make a huge difference? I don't think so. Does it make us? Is it something we note? It is something we note. That's how I would put it.
Same here, same with us. I mean, look at, again, some similar to signaling, we look at it. It's part of our discussion when we do, after reviewing all the applications, but it's again, part of the thorough review of each and every application.
Are you guys
and I think
I keep interrupting you. I am so sorry.
No.
Please speak.
No, I'm just saying, I think I addressed it earlier. It is a factor, just because if, not being the most, not being known as the most attractive city in the world, I love Cleveland, but if someone has always lived in, again, Southern California, has no connection here, they're probably not coming here. So I'm less likely going to be, like if they've shown some interest, then I'm more likely to do it if they signal somehow, and sometimes they signal in different ways. But yeah, it's, we don't want to waste time interviewing someone, and they don't want to waste their time being interviewed, probably.
I think the only thing that I wanted to, I don't know if you guys know, but Child Neurology has chosen October 10th as the date to release interviews. Okay. So if you don't get interviews right away, it's not because we hate you all. It's because we're politely agreeing to the gentleman's agreement that give everybody a fair shake at it.
And a couple of questions I've had about that, just since that's very relevant and somewhat fresh, is that just because you don't get an interview on the 10th doesn't mean that all the interviews are gone, because there will be multiple rounds of interview offers that go out. And this is new to us, and so I don't know that every program is even going to offer all of their spots, because there's a very quick turnaround. I mean, that first universal offer group, because there's a very quick turnaround between the 10th and the first interview. So you need to fill the first couple of interview slots with people and not have people spread out throughout the entire season initially. So that's something that we're all figuring out as program directors right now, because this universal offer date is brand new to child neurology. So yeah, I think that's a very important point, that this is brand new and we're all figuring it out. But we both don't dislike you, and also there are more interview slots out there, even if you don't get one on the 10th.
All right. Just look at the time. That is our 1 hour mark. Again, thank you for everyone who attended tonight. Especially a big thank you to all of our panelists. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to our panelists. But other than that, I hope you guys had a good time and have a good evening.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you to you all as the organizers, and thanks to everybody who attended.
Thank you, guys.